Music producer, writer, performer and all-round entertainer Barry Upton has been a good friend of mine for many years. His creativity and positivity have led him to great success with many hit records internationally.
After touring around Europe with his band in the late 70s, Barry's illustrious career started in the early 80s with international chart toppers Brotherhood of Man. Then he became a UK top nightclub DJ whilst writing and producing for many famous hit artists. In the 90s, he turned to country music for inspiration and wrote worldwide hit 5, 6, 7, 8, leading to his formation of pop band Steps, who have now had numerous single and album chart success. After more hits with such diverse acts as Sonia, John Otway and the Cheeky Girls, plus a song in the double Oscar-winning film Little Miss Sunshine, Barry moved to the Sunshine Paradise of Thailand, where he's been presenting on radio and TV, as well as continuing to perform music live. His passion has always been songwriting, and this he successfully continues to do.
It was a showbiz friend of his, Shay Ritchie, who labelled him a kind of musical prostitute or pop tart. Hence, here we have the Confessions of a Pop Tart.
It's not so good when you suddenly see cassettes of your album in a dump bin at a motorway service station. You think, oh, maybe we're sliding downhill a little bit. We wanted to quit while we were at the top. So we decided amicably to call it a day, and suddenly it was all over.
So how do you move on from that, and what did you do next?
Well, during my time with Brotherhood of Man, I'd learned a lot about music production, and I felt I could become a music producer. I had a 4-track recorder at home. I used to make demos, especially with Janie, and we actually thought maybe we should become a duo, myself and Janie. So we did a couple of gigs as a duo. One of them, I remember, was in Leicester Square, at a club in Leicester Square, and George Michael turned up and saw us. He said, yeah, you're pretty good. And he started chatting with us and telling us about this new song he just recorded called Careless Whisper. Yeah, we were right in amongst it all. But I did produce a kind of robotic kind of band called Clockwork, recorded at Phil Fearon's studio. He was the guy from Galaxy. And that got played on the tube, and the act appeared on the tube. I used to love going up to Newcastle and being in the audience on the tube. That was a great program. It was like a modern Ready Steady Go. Anyway, that song got released. Didn't do too much. Didn't really bother the charts. But at that time, then Janie, she was a Christian, and it never really bothered us all through our relationship that last couple of years. Didn't really bother us, except at this moment she started stepping up her activities and going to Bible classes, and she used to go to this thing called what was it called? The Christian Arts Centre. That was it. I remember Nick Beggs from Kajagoogoo, he used to go there, and of course Cliff Richard would be a regular attendee, and she kept meeting up with her ex, who was also a Christian, and he convinced her that if I wasn't practicing Christian, then I must be the devil. So she had to leave me, and she did. I was completely devastated. So now I've got no band, no girlfriend.
A down moment for sure. How did you deal with that?
I became a Pop-Tart. Yes. The boy-girl duo thing I thought was quite a good idea, and I auditioned for a partner for the project, but actually, really and truly, I was just auditioning for a new girlfriend, and there was a beautiful girl called Sherry who, she was only 18, but she was lovely, and she auditioned very well. And at that time, I had the indignity of signing on because I was out of work. So Janie had introduced me to this modelling agency called Ugly. They were a good modelling agency, and they got me some extra work, and a couple of things which were commercials, things like that, parts in commercials. Wasn't really what I wanted to do, but it was a bit of extra money, and it was something to do. But there were no big production jobs coming in, and so the rest of that year my funds were running out, and by Christmas I climbed so high I had a big fall. So 84 just was a completely down year.
Did you manage to pick yourself up?
Well, my New Year's resolution for 1985 was to think positively, and this state of mind has kept me in good stead practically for the rest of my life. I thought, well, I'll just say yes to any offers that come in, and I'll just think and act positively. So the approach paid dividends almost immediately. There was a band at the local Tiffany's Mecca nightclub called Street Life, and Mike Stevens, who was my friend, he was in that band, and he sometimes stayed at my house or my flat, used the couch, and myself and him, we formed a band called Yeah Yeah. We'd play at this place called the Pink Elephant, which used to be called Caesar's Palace. It was almost opposite my flat, and I got to know the manager really well, Roger Dance. He would invite me to go and see all these bands he was promoting and bringing in from America, like Sister Sledge, Kenny G, and he had a Rolls Royce, so he'd phone me up and say, "What are you doing tonight? I've got Sister Sledge down at the Dome in Brighton. You want to come?" So yes, of course, I'm up for a night out. And then the Tiffany's manager, his name was Foggy, and I started playing squash with him. And he said, why don't you appear one evening as a celebrity? On Valentine's night, we're going to do something special, and we're going to do a competition, so you could be one of the judges, and maybe be a guest DJ. I said, well, I don't know much about DJing. I've never really done it. But anyway, I did do it. Again, the positivity factor kicked in, and just after that, I got a call on a Saturday night from Foggy, and he said, "What are you doing tonight?" "Nothing, just sitting at home." He says, "No, you're not. You're going to be a DJ at my club tonight. One of my DJs hasn't turned up." So his main DJ, Paul Christian, was there, and I could use his records and just give him time off at times and take over. But the place was full. I was thrown right in at the deep end, and I did it. And then I got asked to do it the second week. He said, "I've already sacked that DJ, you're on again." And I think he liked it because I spoke to the audience. I knew how to speak to an audience and knew how to entertain. So I soon learned how to mix and put the correct records on, and the floor fillers. Soon learned what the floor fillers were. And so I got paid for it as well. It was fantastic. It became a regular thing. And a byproduct of doing this job was the fact that there were girls. While Paul Christian was on, there was all kinds of things going on with me backstage with certain delightful young ladies. And then one evening, I just finished the evening, and I was asked by the regional director, Tony Marshall, to go into the office. And I thought, he's going to give me a dressing down. I'm not taking this seriously. Anyway, it turns out that Street Life, and I've been moved up to 3 nights a week, and I was working with Street Life on a Wednesday night as well. And they liked working with me because I wasn't trying to fight them being a band, trying to be clever than the band. I always thought the band was the bigger thing. So they'd had a word with Tony Marshall, and he took me in and said, "How much would you like to do the Hammersmith Palais?" I went, "Really? That means it's a proper job. I've got to take this seriously." And he says, "Well, not only that, I'll give you 2 nights at the Hammersmith Palais. I'll give you 1 night at the Café de Paris in Leicester Square, and 1 night at Ilford Palais." So all of a sudden, I'm working 4 nights a week. I'm now a professional DJ. At Ilford Palais, I perfected a party set, and I'd get a lot of girls up on the stage there, and doing all these kind of dances, the different dances and stuff, and yeah, it was great fun. At Hammersmith Palais, the manager Bert Sale was always getting topless models to appear on stage with me, and there was a lot of debauchery, shall I say, went on around the Hammersmith Palais at that time. This was the mid-80s, and he always told me what we're doing is we're selling sex, and there was certainly plenty of that going on, and sometimes in the dressing rooms as well. But my new career had started, and I was enjoying it. I was really relishing it. We used to get lots of appearances by special guests at the Hammersmith Palais, like I remember Dirty Den from EastEnders. He was like the biggest thing since sliced bread, and the place was jam-packed, and I had to bring him on stage and kind of do like an interview. When I first met him in the dressing room, because my name was in lights outside the Hammersmith Palais, he said, "Oh, so you're Barry Upton?" I went, "Yeah." He says, "Well, me and Lofty, we another actor in EastEnders, we drive past it every night going home after work. We've always said, I wonder who Barry Upton is." Now you know.
So did this mean you had to give music production a back seat?
Well, no. Around about that time, mid-80s, was when the DJ remixer producer was starting to rise up. So I was producing in conjunction with doing my DJing as well. And there was a company called Satchel, run by a guy called Henry Hadaway, famous for the tweets. And I ended up doing some tracks there with Mike Stevens. And then they brought in an act called Frances Raffel, who I'd met before through Tony Hiller. And I had a little affair with her. But she suddenly then said, "Oh, I'm going to be in this big musical called Les Miserables, playing Eponine." And as her boyfriend, I had to go along to one of the previews at the Barbican, thinking I'm going to be bored out of my brain. And how wrong was I? It was fantastic, unbelievable. So that was a special moment. And then Henry Hadaway decided to do a double pack of the tweets with another single for Christmas. And so I ended up, myself and Mike Stevens, we ended up being the tweets. I know, I'm a Pop-Tart, come on.
Then you appeared live on BBC Radio 1.
Ah, yes. Now, in those days, Radio 1 or Radio 2, they weren't 24 hours. But for children in need that year, they decided to have a radiothon, which would go on all night, and from two nightclubs, one in Birmingham and the Hammersmith Palais. So we had all these celebrities coming in, auctioning things off. Simply Red actually played. That was one of their first ever live appearances on radio, I think. Robert Palmer turned up, I remember, and he sidled up to me on the stage and said, "I think I've just recorded the best thing I've ever recorded in my life." And I went, "Oh, really? What's that?" He said, "It's called Addicted to Love." And he was sure enough. He was absolutely right. It was one of the best things he'd ever recorded. So yes, we did the radiothon with Peter Powell and Anne Nightingale it was. And I had the privilege of actually talking live on Radio 1. There was all sorts of things would go on at the Hammersmith Palais. It was an amazing place. They did concerts. I remember the Ramones. There was Lonnie Donegan. And I remember meeting Brian May there, because I used to have to go in and play the music in between the bands and just do fill-ins. But yeah, I met Brian May up on the balcony there. He was a Lonnie Donegan fan, so that was nice. And as I say, my name was in lights in London. Fantastic.
So your positivity stance worked. Now you're in demand.
Well, yes, and this is 1986 now. I was producing all kinds of records, dance records. I took part in a film called Foreign Body with Victor Banerjee and Warren Mitchell. I was asked to play the part of the Hammersmith Palais DJ. They came in on a normal night and filmed the audience, and then did the close-ups with me doing my DJing as part of the close-ups. And then I was all kinds of people would be offered to me. Frankie Vaughan, for example. Now, my mother used to listen to Frankie Vaughan when I was a kid on that Danzig record player, and there he was. I'm doing a double album with him, and Ivor Raymond, who had previously worked with Brotherhood of Man. And I remember when Frankie Vaughan went on to the Gloria Honeyford show on BBC Radio, and he mentioned my name and said, I've got this guy, he's given me a new sound. I hadn't really changed that much, but I suddenly realised maybe I am. Maybe I'm injecting something new into older material. And then I met a former school friend of mine when I was down in Bournemouth doing the summer season with Brotherhood of Man. I met up with Glenn again, who was my friend at school, and he said he'd got a new 8-track studio he'd built in the back of his house. And so I said, well, I'll come up and try it out. And so ended up producing a thing called Ask the DJ, especially for all the people who knew me at Hammersmith Palais. And it was about the requests that they asked for and all the excuses I would make not to play the song. And it came out really well, and everybody said, well, you should go and try and get a proper release on it. So almost reluctantly I did, but I thought, well, okay, well, I'll have a tour around some record companies, and the first one I went to was Arista, as you might say. And the reason I went to them was because I was a big fan of Daryl Hall and John Oates, and they were on Arista at the time. Well, anyway, unbeknown to me, they had just signed as a subsidiary DMC Records, which was Tony Prince's outfit. And I was already on Disco Mix Club, which was DMC, as part of their DJ club. So I knew a lot about it. Anyway, he sent me, Arista sent me over to him, and he loved the song and put it to his top remixers to make it into a full-blown 12-inch remixed record. And it came out, it was released. And then we went out on a DMC roadshow, and I was part of it. I had this outfit, this like Superman outfit, that was, and I was, instead of Superman, I was Mixman. And I had these two girls in wet t-shirts. Wet t-shirt competitions were the big thing at that time. So we thought it'd be really funny if I had a couple of girl dancers with me in wet t-shirts. And it worked. We called them the wet shirts. Also, for that DMC special DJ Club Records, I did a Jackie Graham mega mix, did that at a Glenn studio as well. And I suddenly made the front cover of Mix Mag, which was the DJ's Bible almost. The magazine that was sent out with the records for Disco Mix Club members. And this went internationally, worldwide. So, all of a sudden, I'm an international DJ.
So how did you handle fame the second time around?
Well, first of all, I became an even bigger Pop-Tart, and I got cocky in more ways than one. I was just going out and doing all kinds of events, and Mike Stevens, he asked me to go to Marbella. He was playing in a band down there, and they needed a DJ, so I went down to Marbella and did a week down there, and then I did the Hippodrome DJ convention, which was organised again by DMC. And there was a world record attempt, which I was asked to do by Tony Prince, where you had to play as many records as you could in 2 minutes, and they had to be individual records, but you heard the title of the song. Now, I knew that a lot of those early Beatles records, they always started off with a title. So, help, I need somebody, it's been a hard day's night, can't buy me love. So I just put all those records in sequence. And for a while, I held the world record for the most number of records played in 2 minutes where you heard the title. And then just after that, the Hammersmith Palais decided, or Mecca decided they were going to refit the Hammersmith Palais. So that meant that I had to go back to Dunstable Tiffany's and work there for a while. But I didn't mind it. It was local to home, girls galore, and I was still doing Ilford Palais. Girls galore, so I had no reservations about doing it. I was enjoying my life all over again.
More girls then means your Pop-Tart credentials were stacking up.
Oh yes, and there's more in my book if anybody takes the trouble to read the book. There's a lot more detail in the book. But at the start of 1987, even Tiffany's decided to have a refit as well. It's going to become Cinderella Rockefellers. So I moved to a nightclub in Bedford called Sweetings, and there's a guy called Chris Sweeting who owned it. A lovely guy, called me up and said, can you come up and perform here for a while? So again, another set of girls, but one of them was a girl called Simone, and she was a little bit special, and so she became a regular girlfriend. And Mike Stevens, he'd bought a house in Newport Pagnell, which is not far from Luton or Dunstable, just near Milton Keynes. And I remember going up and visiting him, and then seeing that there was a new estate near there, and maybe I could buy a house. So I did. I bought a 4-bedroomed detached house, and Simone moved in. And then eventually Cinderella Rockefellers was ready for a reopening, and I did that one. I did the opening nights, and again Leslie Grantham was the special guest, and he suddenly said to me, "Oh, I saw your movie the other day, you were in a movie." I went, "Really?" And that was Foreign Body, the one that we filmed at Hammersmith Palais. And I said, oh great, what's it like? He said, "It's rubbish." And it was, he was correct. It wasn't that good. But anyway, there was a bit of a problem at the reopening of Cinderella Rockefellers because the manager didn't like us playing any black music. And how can you do that? It's impossible to keep an audience entertained and playing what they want to hear without playing any black music. It's ridiculous. So I got sacked because I just said, "Oh, it's impossible, I can't do that." And that story made the local paper.
Don't tell me. The gods smiled on you again.
Yeah, but then I got a call from Luminar Leisure, a guy called Steve Thomas, and he'd got this place called The Dome, which was a massive nightclub in Birmingham. It was as big as the Hammersmith Palais, if not bigger. It was on the same location as the Night Out. So I became a DJ at the Dome, and I'd already appeared as a performer at the Night Out. Probably the only person who's ever done that, done both of those things. Anyway, we had all kinds of special guest acts playing. Edwin Starr, Shack Attack. I remember Rick Astley coming, and Rick Astley, his first record, Never Gonna Give You Up, hadn't been released yet. I remember I had it as a promo, and I thought it was very good. But like everybody else, I thought he was a black singer. And when I met him in the dressing room, I said to him, "Can you tell us where Rick Astley is?" He goes, "It's me." I went, "It's you?" He says, "I know everybody says that." And he came on stage. I said, "This guy is going to be a star." Went on and performed Never Gonna Give You Up. Went down an absolute storm. And it was obvious that was going to be a massive hit record. And then after that, Luminar Leisure expanded, and there was clubs in Cambridge and Peterborough, which Steve Thomas wanted me to go and be a DJ at. And that's where I first met a guy who's been a great friend of mine ever since, Crazy Kevin. He was DJ of the Year, 2 years running. And he used to come with the wet t-shirt competition. And he was really well cut out for it. And I used to think that I was maybe a little bit over the top sometimes, maybe the way I dressed or on my presentation. But once I saw Crazy Kevin, I realised, no, I'm not. and I was producing some house music at that time, so I got Crazy Kevin involved. And I wrote a song called Crazy House, which I recorded on my home studio, and I had Kevin do some little shouts on it, some of his kind of like stage antics, and then and my girlfriend Simone, I had her singing a couple of sections on it, and I also put I needed something to perk it up at one point, and so I just put the craziest thing that came into my head at that time, which was that Smoke on the Water, and it kind of works. And later on I found out that Pete Waterman, he loved that track, Crazy House, and one of the reasons was because I put that Smoke on the Water riff in it. About this time as well, I started playing a lot of tennis. I was really suddenly got the bug for tennis. I needed to keep fit, and there was a tennis club not very far from where I lived, so I joined. I got the tennis bug.
So now you had a studio at home to produce it.
Well, yes and no. It was a home studio, but it wasn't really a professional studio. However, there was a really good studio in Bedford, not too far away, and there's a guy called Steve who'd put it together and called it CRS Studios, and he gave me carte blanche to produce whatever I wanted in there. He needed somebody to work in there, and so I produced some pop and dance tracks, some which became quite successful actually, some of those dance tracks. Barry Tomes was a friend of mine who, going back to when Brother of the Man toured the Middle East, he was the tour manager on that, and he got in touch with me and said he'd got this girl called Norma Lewis, and she'd just been signed to a company in Barcelona called Key Records, and could I record something with her? So we did, and that it resulted in a trip to Barcelona. I met the record label, and they kind of like got me involved with their label, and they needed 2 mix albums for the Christmas market of the hits that they put out during the year. So I ended up coming back to England with 2 boxes of 12-inch singles, and I ended up mixing them together by just using a Revox, a couple of decks, and a lot of splicing.
This is a journey into sound.
In those days, it's not like technology now. We had to splice the tape, and my fingers were red raw by the end of 2 weeks of editing and making these 2 mix albums, which I then flew out to Barcelona and delivered to them, and they loved them. They came out, and actually they're still on YouTube. You can still access them. Disc Jockey Mix.
And were you still DJing in between all of this?
Yes, I was still doing the Ilford Palais. I was doing Peterborough. I was doing Cambridge. And especially at Ilford Palais on a Thursday night, the big party set, which I think I previously mentioned, with getting lots of girls on stage, that was so popular, and that was going strong.
So keeping a faithful relationship was almost impossible then.
Oh, well, what can you do when girls are coming at you from all angles, and also special girls, like there was a girl called Sandy who was doing a Madonna tribute act. She kind of looked like that, like Madonna in her Desperately Seeking Susan days. Very attractive, and her manager asked me if I could record her, and I had a song called No Question About It, and got her to sing on that, and made her sound like Madonna. And that resulted in him wanting me to take it to Meeden, which is the Music Trade Festival. So I suggested, well, why don't I take Sandy with me? And then she can showcase the song to all and sundry. Anyway, Key Records, I took her down to Cannes in the south of France, and we got on very, very famously. And she did actually sign to Key Records, although I don't think they ever released the record. But we got quite close on that trip. And then I came across a booth called Romance Records, and I remember dropping off one of my cassettes there. And later on, when I got back to the UK, Sam Kleiman, who was the head of Romance Records, he called me from the USA and wanted to sign the songs. In the meantime, Simone was still with me, and she managed to bring in a couple of kittens, and we had a couple of cats at home, and it was a nice feel to have this beautiful house, and I had a beautiful girlfriend, and I was just having fun. The trouble was that CRS Productions, the studio in Bedford, I spent so much time over there, and I was getting so involved producing new material that Simone kind of felt a little bit left out. So inevitably, she left me for someone better. Was he better?
Serves you right by the sound of it. How quickly did you get over it this time?
Well, I was so busy. I mean, Key Records in Barcelona, they put out the Norma Lewis single, and then got me to go over to Barcelona to do a whole album in a digital studio, brand new digital studio. That was new technology at that time. And I had a bit of a reunion with Nikki, because from Brotherhood of Man, because I heard that she was singing somewhere in Spain. So we managed to get her up to Barcelona to do all the harmonies, and great reunion for me and Nikki. How we laughed. Yes, we did. Also, there was a band called El Etuano Masculino, which were a little bit of a Spanish Spandau ballet, and I had to have an interpreter, but I produced them as well. So what was happening was, I was commuting backwards and forwards to Barcelona. I would be DJing on a Friday and a Saturday, and then on a Sunday I would fly out to Barcelona, work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday morning, and then commute back to London on the Friday afternoon, and then do my Peterborough and Cambridge gigs, and then the whole circle went again. So this went on for a couple of months, and I just got into the swing of it, really. And it really was like just catching a bus to Barcelona all the time. I know it's a plane, but it did actually feel like just the most natural thing in the world. And then after that period of activity, Satchel Records got me involved with them again, and I ended up doing a Wilson Pickett remix at Red Bus Studios. I recorded a track for Miller Lite, the beer, and that was, I think, they were going to give the record away free in the Daily Mirror or something, if you set enough can tops in. And that was quite funny, because one day a big truck pulled up outside my house and gave me loads and crates and crates and crates of Miller Lite, and my garage was full of it. So that was a nice little perk. And then I don't know if you remember Mike and Bernie Winters, the comedy duo. Well, Mike Winters, he was living in Florida, but his son had a band, and Mike had brought the band over, and I ended up producing them at CRS Studios. And I also did a track for Frank Bruno. He was fighting Mike Tyson, and I had to do this song called The Warrior, for him to walk out to. And we were supposed to do it at Wembley Stadium, but there was some, I don't know what went on. I think there was some car accident, and something got changed, and it ended up being in Las Vegas. But they still used the music, and I was quite proud of that. And then I met up with David Van Day from Dollar, and did a couple of solo singles for him. And in between time, I'm doing all my DJ gigs with a steady succession of women, girls.
Now you were an international Pop-Tart.
Oh yes, with a vengeance. Then Me Dem came up in 1989, and Sam and Iris from Romance Records, I suddenly met up with them because they had been kind of courting me during the year, and they wanted to release some of my dance material. And they ended up making a dance CD called Barry Upton's House of Ill Repute. And there was a kind of mixture of songs on that, really, but all kind of with a dance theme. And it was nice to have an album out in the States. And one of those tracks, the track Crazy House, I think it was Sam Clymer who did a deal with Supreme Records in the UK. So that ended up coming out as a single. And also he did a deal with another song called Love Dance, which came out in Italy. Crazy House, by the way, was used by Pete Waterman on the hit Man and Her. He really loved that track, Crazy House, and I'd be DJing, usually in Cambridge on a Saturday night, get home, and then this program called The Hitman and Her, which came from a nightclub, and hosted by Pete Waterman and Michaela Strachan. And they used my song Crazy House as the music for the dance competition, 6 weeks running, so that was like 6 minutes of TV money. Excellent. So that money was coming in for that, but I wasn't really getting any royalties in from Sam. I think I did get a little bit of money when we signed to Supreme, but I didn't really see any other money coming. But I did hear stories of afterwards of these songs appearing on aerobic tapes and things like that. So he was doing all kinds of dodgy deals, I think. But he did get me, which was a really good gig, this one, a chance to produce a famous Parisian music hall lady. I can't remember her name now, but she was a famous music hall artist. And I did get paid okay for that, and that was a great opportunity to produce a record in Paris.
And didn't you get involved with the TV series Prisoner at Cell Block H?
Ah, yes. Very popular TV series at the time, and Ray Levy, who used to be involved with Henry Hathaway at Satchel Records, but he had his own label called A1 Records, and he managed to get the rights to put out the Prisoner Cell Block H theme, and sure enough, it got into the charts. It got into the top 10. So he was flying the girl who sang it over from Australia, and then suddenly panicked because he couldn't use the original record or backing track because it was Australian musicians. So in those days you had to re-record the backing track for Top of the Pops, and so I got a frantic phone call. Barry, can you quickly get into the studio and re-record the backing track for Top of the Pops? I'm going to need it like tomorrow. So I quickly phoned around and got a couple of musicians that I knew well, but the drummer that I would normally use wasn't available. So my bass player said, I've got a friend, a guy called Clem Catini. He's played thousands of sessions and he's a really good drummer. So we got him in, did the backing track, and then went over to the pub. And then I was chatting with this guy, Clem, and said to him, my friend said you were on quite a few hits, and he just reeled off all of these hits from the 60s that he was playing drums on, famous hits. And then he said, of course, I was an original member of the Tornadoes. And I went, but that was the first record I ever bought or wanted my parents to buy. You're a legend. And that was a fantastic meeting to meet him, and he really was he still is a legend.
Wasn't it around this time you became really good friends with TV comedian, actor, game show host Shane Ritchie? And it was him who first gave you that Pop Tart title. So how did that happen?
Okay, well, I had a friend called Gary T, who was a DJ, and he introduced me to Shane. Said that Shane was looking for somebody to work with in the studio. He wanted to do. He was actually a comedian at the time, and he wanted to get into music. And he was at the time just about to get married to Colleen Nolan, and I knew the Nolans very well, so we became really good friends, and we shared the same sense of humour. And he used to come to some of my gigs. I accompanied him to some of his holiday camp gigs, Butlins and all that kind of thing. And we had a great time together. And then we wrote and recorded an album together. And we thought, well, maybe we should do it as a duo, like Hall and Oates. And we came up with the name Famous Names. That was what we were going to call ourselves. And then we hawked the album around to... we had some really good songs on that album. And we hawked it around to record labels, but didn't get any takers. They just didn't take us seriously, because he was getting to be a fairly well-known comedian. And there was me from Brotherhood of Man in the middle of the road era. And they just didn't take us seriously. But something that did come out of that was, once again, I'm mixing with the Nolans, and so I said to them, have you got any record deal or anything at the moment? And they said no. So I said, well, why don't we record a new version of I'm in the Mood for Dancing? Like, make it up to date, more kind of late 80s style, PWL style. And we did, and it turned out fantastic. So that ended up being released by Ray Levy at A1 Records. And Brian Paul, who was Brian Paul and the Tremolos in the early 60s, I took him into CRS studios, and we did a new kind of version with a rap in it, and a rap, 3 girl rappers in a bag, called a version of Do You Love Me? Do You Love Me? With the rap in it. It seemed like a good idea at the time. And then Sam Kleiman, he suddenly did a Crazy House promo cassette and was distributing that. So it seemed like my music was getting out there to the world, but not much money was coming in. Then I went to a Michael Jackson concert with Shane. I went to a Prince concert, which those two concerts really left a big mark on me, especially Prince, and how entertainment really should be in the modern day at that time. Absolutely fantastic, and things were going up to a much higher level. It wasn't then that Shane labelled me as a pop tart. It was a bit later on, but certainly he got that one right. And one thing that me and Shane got completely wrong was that Christmas, because the girls in the Nolans, they were going to cook us Christmas dinner, and then we were messing around. They said, no, go on, you two get out and leave us alone and come back ready for dinner. So we went down the pub, and at that time Shane was doing Christmas morning stuff with Noel Edmonds, and so he was recognised everywhere, and people kept coming up to us buying us drinks. And what was it? Drambuie, that was it. Never again. So we were knocking back these Drambuies, and we got back to Shane's house absolutely out of our brains, and we started. I had some snow spray in the back of my car, and we went in spraying snow everywhere, and the girls weren't too pleased about that. Next thing, I'm in the toilet and I passed out. When I came to, that was probably one of the most embarrassing moments of my life, because I'm thinking, the Nolans are on the other side of that door and they've just cooked us Christmas dinner, and now I can't even move to open the door. I found out later that Shane had passed out in the bedroom upstairs, and when we eventually came to, and we sheepishly appeared, the girls just said, serves your own fault. You could have had a beautiful Christmas dinner. At that point we couldn't eat anything. I think we might have had some later. Anyway, that was probably my most embarrassing moment. Whoops.
Confessions of a Pop-Tart. Yeah. Interesting confessions of a Pop-Tart.